There, recording. Good morning,
Awesome.
everybody. I'm Maggie Knapp. I'm the Director of Education for the Rochester region. Joining me on the call is Jennifer Berger, who is from the Capital Region. She's the Director of Career Development. Is that your title? I never get it right. And then we also have Natalie Dogood, and Natalie is also in the Eastern New York region, and Natalie is our MarTech specialist. So if you have tools questions, Natalie is a great one to reach out to. And of course, you can reach out to me or to Jen as well. So we are here to help you with all of that.
And I'm going to
sure.
Sorry, Maggie, I don't mean to talk over you. If anybody has questions, because our group is getting larger by the second here, if you want to type it into the chat, I'll be monitoring that as Maggie is going through. This is always one of our most popular classes because we got all sorts of great information. We've got people who are brand new on this call. We've got people who've been around the real estate block many, many times. So it's always good to see a good mix of people. But if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can try and unmute yourself, but it's easier with the flow of things to put it in the chat so that we can address everything.
Oh, I do like to answer questions. So if you have questions, please ask them because we want, this is for you. This isn't for us. So, and I like interaction. So it's all good. So checklists, anybody, and I will ask you questions and I love to get a response. Anybody use checklists now? How many people don't use any kind of checklist ever? Okay, so why might you want to use checklists in when you're as a realtor? What in the world did this just do? Hang on. My computer just did something really strange. It just dumped my PowerPoint.
It looks like Randy took over the meeting.
Okay, so let's make that one person can share. Who's got? Okay.
It's not me, I swear.
All right. Please stop others. Yes. So who's Randy and why are you trying to take over my screen? All right. So let's start again. So can you guys see that screen?
Yep.
So why might you want to use checklists in real estate?
Oh my gosh, it's just good to be organized because life gets crazy.
Thank you, Karen. That's exactly right. It's good to be organized. There's a lot of moving parts. Can you make screen bigger, please? It's as big as it gets. So I don't know how you can change.
We will be sharing the PowerPoint today with everybody on the call.
And Natalie, what's the view they can put it on to make it easier for them?
Yeah, so you'll want to go up to view options and do side-by-side mode.
I don't have that on my computer.
And the person sharing their screen can't do it.
Ah.
But then it basically puts what Maggie's sharing to the side and all the faces to the right, so you don't have to worry about when she's showing you something it getting lost behind faces.
Does that help everybody? So if you go up to the view in the top right corner, you should be able to see side by side and that'll make your screen bigger.
And it's not there. It is still a little, it's hard to read these little words, but again, you'll get a copy of this.
Oh, and you're going to get a copy of all of these checklists. So this checklist is just here as an example. So these are actually available right on Howard Hanna presentations in the Seller's Essential Guides. So this one is checklist preparing for showing and checklist staging your interior. These are available to you, and I'm going to send them all to you in a lot at the end of the class today. So you will receive a copy of all the checklists. They can be used as a reference for something you want to create for yourself, or they can be used the way they are. That's up to you. And if you guys, any of you have a great checklist, by all means, always share it. So checklists prevent overlooking important steps. Karen had said, there's a lot of stuff going on. You don't want to drop any balls. Checklists provide those steps to increase your efficiency. And it really doesn't matter how many times you've done something. You want to make sure that you're doing the same steps so that you're not missing things. Can you imagine going into a surgery and your doctor doesn't have a procedure? well, maybe I'll just, you know, do this time and this that time. And, you know, that doesn't work. There's a reason there's a procedure. So you need to make sure that you are, you have a procedure for real estate, because there are many gray areas in real estate. I hate gray areas. I like black and white. Checklists help you get through those gray areas, because there are certain steps you must make, and there are other things that may happen. And so that process of moving along can be made smoother by having a specific repeatable process. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm looking at faces, I'm looking for
Yeah.
nods, I'm getting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I like to know we're on the same page. So I'd really, really much rather hear from you than not hear from you. And they can make you feel confident. So for our newer agents, if you have checklists and you're in that phase of, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you're the expert because you've got a license, a checklist can help give you confidence, because you know you're supposed to do this thing and then this thing and then this thing and then this thing until you get to the end. I love a quote by Lewis Carroll: begin at the beginning, go on until you come to the end, then stop. Real estate's like that. You got to begin at the beginning and just keep going until you get to the end. And it's your job to get to the end. And this is where you get paid the big bucks. You're paid to not miss those important intermediary steps. Does that make sense to everybody? Thank you, Melissa Carey. I see you nodding away.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Maggie, I have one small comment.
Sure, Karen.
It's Karen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen. It's
Oh,
my
that's
cousin's
okay.
name.
That's just like car in the garage. Think of that. And a thing that has been very helpful for my clients had been me creating checklists for them. Just something simple where they can see the beginning and the end also. So as I'm checking off things, they are checking off things, and that's made them feel much better too. And
Yeah, that's a great, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, because yes, you can have checklists for yourself, and then there are checklists that you can give to your clients that can help them from everything through how to prepare for showing, what the next step is, and what the process is, so they can say, oh, we've cleared this hurdle, and we're on our way to closing. Communication is the number one reason people think their realtors aren't any good, because their realtor didn't communicate to them. So a little over communication can be great, and a checklist can certainly help you with that. So there are bad checklists and there's good checklists. So what are the elements of a bad checklist? You can see some of them here. I don't want to do all the talking. Come on.
Maybe not one at all.
Well, that's certainly a bad checklist. But what are some
checklist? I think a checklist that has more than 10 things, you get lost in it. But in your presentation for listing or your interview for buyers, either one of those, they should be reviewed, because with buyers especially, they'll turn around and say, oh my gosh, oh wait, Nancy said this might happen. And the same thing with sellers. So if it's not too lengthy, it does allow a level of comfort and confidence, because you shared that might happen.
That's great. Yeah. So a bad checklist can be just too long,
Right.
but it can also be vague. So a vague checklist doesn't have any dates, doesn't have any times, doesn't have any specifics. So it doesn't really help anyone to track, right? Because we really have to be tracking what's happening. Does that make sense?
I really agree. I agree with Nancy that the worst thing is to hand your clients, a 20-page presentation. I have a rule that they can only have 2 pages, and that's it.
Well, you're the CEO of your business, so you can have a 2-page one. Somebody else may have a 20-page one that works for them. So it depends on our personalities. It depends on how we're presenting, and it depends on who we're presenting to.
Yeah.
So we are all the CEOs of our business, and you're very seldom going to do this twice exactly the same way because you're not working with the same situation in any given circumstance. It can be too long. It can be hard to use. Means it's not understandable. It can be impractical. You may put things on a checklist that people don't really have control over. And it makes them turn off rather than turn on because they don't understand it. So good checklists are precise. Buy milk, 1 gallon. It's precise, it's short, it's to the point, efficient and to the point. Easy to use even in the most difficult circumstances. So even when people are stressed out, a checklist should be easy to use. And are they ever stressed in real estate? Are clients ever stressed? Yeah, they get really stressed out. So a checklist can help keep things under control because, as we've said here already this morning, it helps them to see that there's a process, and it helps them to see that we're ticking off that process. It also helps them to see that you're actually working. How does it demonstrate that you're actually working? You're doing something.
They
Chuck?
know what to expect. They can see that you're doing what's on your checklist, and they know what to expect from you.
Right.
Great, Lori. Chuck, did you have something to say?
No, I just say, you've got two checklists. You've got the checklist for the clients, things that you need them to do. And then of course you've got your own checklist. I think one of the things that's hard to do is stay integrated. And part of the problem is we have so many little things to do. Did we go on Engage and change that client into a prospect, and have we moved that person down the funnel towards closing so that we're managing things using the tools that we have? It's so easy. Like when we get a successful release of a contingency, we give ourselves a pat on the back, and we usually don't do anything else. It's hard to get in the habit of remembering that we have, whether it be through, the tasks on Transaction Desk, or similarly tasks basically in Engage, building those checklists through those portals, and that's all, and then just using them.
Yeah. So one of the ways that you can use those checklists so that your clients know you're actually doing something is if you're tracking all those little details, even when you don't have any news to really report, if you can report back to a client, hey, Paul, this is Maggie. I'm just calling to let you know that, today we had 5 calls on your listing. We booked 3 appointments. 2 of them are coming to the open house on Sunday. I contacted your attorney about this thing, and that's in process. And your loan officer said they've gotten all the paperwork they need.
So the worst thing, honestly, the worst thing that happens in real estate sometimes is our houses sell.
Yeah.
Meaning that they sell, but the client doesn't know why it sold. It doesn't know the 10 things that we did to get it to that point. Because especially when you've built up a significant listing inventory and you've got all those activities going, it's very time consuming. And to take the time out to then, oh, and by the way, I did this, and we usually just don't do it. I've got an open house on this Saturday, and we just listed it Tuesday, and I took the Spacio link, put it on Facebook, did a boost. I've got 10 buyer leads through Facebook, and I got to call my client and say, oh, by the way, since Wednesday, I've had this many people have registered, blah, blah, blah. And whether they come to the thing or not, but at least they know you're doing something, right?
Right. So that you can be using these checklists to track what you're doing, and then make a schedule for yourself, maybe another checklist or a task list, where you're communicating that back to your clients, because it's really important to let them know what you're doing. Because in a fast market, when things are moving quickly, they can think that you're just sitting on, why did they need you? Why did they need to pay you all that money? So you need to demonstrate your value, because remember, it is never a listing. You're looking at the longevity, what's coming behind that. So how many referrals can you get out of that? How many buyers can you pick up and how many referrals from that? Because everybody needs to be an oak tree. Melissa Carey, yep.
So in one of your classes, you were explaining, I believe it was one of your classes quite a while ago that I've been doing and I absolutely love is when I go into a listing appointment, I have all the tools that we have, but I also have them kind of in a checklist because it can be overwhelming with everything we can do. So some people don't even want to sign in their front yard. So I even have that, you know, we have the nice white, you know, signs versus, you know, just whatever you do. So a big, long checklist of everything, kind of go over them briefly. But then afterwards, when I go back, it's short and I'd be like, okay, now we decided we're not doing an open house, but just going over the things that they did check out of those 100 things we offered. And I do the same on a buyer's presentation. These are the things that I can do for you, but let me get this right. This is just, you know, what you want, and going back and sending that follow-up email the next day with just the things that we've picked, but initially showing them everything that we can offer. So you know, it's just a way of reaching out to them the next day, make sure I've got everything correct, but then going over that checklist, making it small, one for them, one for me. And then I always tell them, if I don't follow through and you don't see this ad in the penny saver, let me know. This is what I should be doing for you.
Yeah, so it's a really scary thing to hold yourself accountable and give your clients the opportunity to help hold you accountable. On any listing presentation or buyer presentation, one of the last things I say is, it's my job to do the best job for you I can. If at any time you don't feel like I'm doing that job, I need you first to promise to communicate to me. If I haven't satisfied your question, here's my manager's card, and I want you to call them. They've never gotten that call, and I don't want you to be the first, but if I'm not satisfying you as a client, I do want you to make that call. And if you choose not to work with me at that point, I still hope you'll work with Howard Hanna, because I think we're the best company to represent your needs. Because I tell them that up front, guess what? They call me. But that's part of my checklist, that checklist of holding myself accountable and giving my clients from the day one, this is how you do it. And every time I do it, I get a little nervous. I get a little shaky. It's like, what if they actually call my manager? It'd be horrible. You know, and some days somebody probably will.
It does keep you accountable. It does make you make sure you're doing everything on that list and stay on track of that buyer or seller, and that really does help your business in the long run.
It does. So we have to we can use these checklists to help ourselves. So this is a famous story. October 30th, 1935, there's some pilots. They were going to fly this prototype plane, and the aircraft went down the highway, or, you know, the runway, and it lifted off, and everything looked beautiful, and it crashed. It crashed because they forgot to release the flight control gust locks. And the story is here at it's hackernoon.com, a happy National Checklist Day. This is a true story. This is how aviation developed a checklist. This is why this crash is changed aviation. So after this, they had a checklist every time a plane takes off. And we've all seen it in the movies and on television, you know, check this, and you have a pilot and a co-pilot checking. It translated into medicine, surgery, it translated into every aspect of life. So these were people that were well seasoned and knew what they were doing, and they forgot to flip one switch, and it cost people their lives. So we're fortunately, people, as Jen Berger likes to say, you know, no one's dying on any tables in real estate. And I steal that from her all the time, but at least give her credit. No one's dying, but it's an important thing, right? This is the biggest investment in people's lives most of the time, unless they own a major business. Real estate is a big deal. We need to get it right. So a checklist can help you. So pretty interesting read if you want to go to Happy National Checklist Day. If you Google National Checklist Day, it'll come right up. Checklist categories for Howard Hanna agents. Where is that? we have how we get started, steps in the selling process, new listing checklist, initiating checklist, seller interview questions, open house checklist, tools checklist. How many of you are using anything like any of these? How many are using, Patty, Curtis, what kind of checklist are you using? You're muted, hon. Patty, you're muted. There you go.
I just have a simple checklist when I go into a listing appointment that I actually tell my clients what I'm going to do as we list it.
Great.
And then through the process, once it's listed, especially since things tend to sell fast, I still try to keep track and tell them what I have done behind the scenes. So they don't think, oh, gee, I could have sold it myself.
Good. Nils, I heard your voice.
Yes, I use checklist pretty much at every level.
Great.
With the idea that not only does it keep me on track, it also keeps them on track. And I look at it as a partnership. And one of the things about the other side when we're talking about why do you use a checklist is just to celebrate, which we typically don't do, celebrate their successes. Because they haven't been through this and we have. You know, if the house looks stellar and shows well, let them know.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great point. You know, to celebrate small victories along the road to closing. We got through that inspection. They didn't ask for anything. The house is in great condition, or to the buyer, we got through the inspection. Everything on the house looks great. We're good to go. There's a couple minor things we want to take care of, but nothing major. Great. Awesome. And then, of course, we have sometimes we don't have that result. We have, oh, we got through this inspection and now we have a number of things we need to address, but another checklist can help you get through that. And it helps keep people level in their emotions. If you can see a path to getting through a process, and sometimes the path to getting through is this house has too many problems for your particular budget and we need to move on.
How many times have we been asked a question that throws us off track? The checklist allows us to come back to where we left off.
Right. Yeah, usually these lists are going to be available. I'm going to send you everything that we have, and then you can create your own also. So anybody using a checklist that's not on this particular list?
Yeah, I think I've created some of my own, and in time, when I first started, I had too many checklists and it became very confusing. And I appreciated what Chuck said earlier about, you know, you get to a certain sign off, but do you remember to send it to everyone who needs it and so forth? If we're in too many programs and too many tools, it can get really stressful. And so I had to simplify it a lot. And for me, and I appreciate what Maggie said, that you're your own CEO, you do it your own way. For me, my telephone is, you know, my key. I have it with me everywhere. So I need to have as much as possible available and accessible on my phone, because I don't carry around my computer always. So I simplified some checklists and just made it in notes. I just have a very generic checklist there. Well, more than one, but that works for me, but not maybe for everyone else. And I don't use all the Howard Hanna tools, but that's just me. If I have too much going on, I get overwhelmed. I need to simplify, and I have a few good tools. And then I transfer some of those checklists on my telephone so I can check them off wherever I am.
Yeah, and that's, you do have to figure out what works for you. Are you a paper person or are you a phone person? Or are you like me? I do both. I have it in two places. So if my phone fell, I was with a group of agents a couple of years ago, actually at the Howard Hanna launch, and they were standing on the edge of Canandaigua Lake, and somebody came by, and one of the girls, her arm went up with her iPhone, her brand new iPhone in it, and into the lake it went. And her life was on the phone. She didn't have it backed up in paper. So, you know, these things can happen. It was a little terrifying for her. So you may, the main thing that was on the last screen was make your list practical. So simplification is a good process, and you can't use 500 checklists. So we're going to give you a whole bunch of them. You don't have to use them all. You can combine them. You can work them whatever way you want. So you need to figure out what does work best for you and not make it too complicated, because you're absolutely right, Karen. You can't manage to have everything. It's like if you are a cook and you're trying to make bouillabaisse, it's not a dish you'd want to make every day. It's very complicated, has many steps. Most of us most of our meals make something fairly simple, and that gets us fed every day. So those other things are kept for, so don't overcomplicate things. It's a great tip.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that helps me out in the contracts that I have is directly right after I get done with the paperwork, I go right to my phone and start putting every place that I'm supposed to be calling people to make sure that I'm on top of stuff. I start blocking those time frames out for me to stay on top of that particular listing. That way it's like I'm calling the mortgage, I'm calling the other agent to find out how their mortgage is doing, just so that nothing really falls through the loops. And then that way our closings are on time.
Yeah, so I heartily agree with that. When I have a contract, buyer or seller, I take the contract and I sit down with my phone and I put everything in my phone, and then I put out days that are ahead. So if I have a closing commitment due on the 15th, I will have 2 weeks out, then 5 days out, and 3 day out reminders to check on it. Because you do not want to have, if you leave things to the last moment, you're often too late, and you can miss very important windows of opportunity to take care of things proactively instead of reactively. It's much better to be in a proactive position than into a reactive position. So I hope all of you understand the difference. So yeah, and even if it's on paper, just make sure you've got those dates written out ahead. Melissa, did you have something you want to say?
Transaction desk, the checklists in there are absolutely amazing. So every transaction I have, I add my admin in. And then you have in the checklist, you can add your inspection reports, your attorney approvals, and they're all right there. And I add in everything, checking on bank appraiser, if the bank appraisal was done. And then I do that exact thing you said, is set up all the reminders. And it even goes to my admin. So that's like my lifesaver, especially when you've got like 5 or 6 going at once. In the, it comes into your email every day. It just tells you, mortgage is due, commitment, inspection. So I have all those checklists ahead of time, and it is huge.
Yeah, what's nice about Transaction Desk, for those of you who have Authentisign, is that it's linked to actual contract dates, and so it automatically puts some things in there for you. We do have some features in Engage that have transaction. They're still not tied to some of those dates yet. I'm hoping that's going to change in the future. So does everybody in New York State, Jen, do you guys have Transaction Desk? What do you have? Dotloop? What's your e-signature, e-forms?
Natalie is going to be able to help me more with this than I do.
We have Dotloop.
You have Dotloop?
We
have Authentisign.
Yeah,
we
so
use zip forms in the capital region.
Yeah, zip forms.
Okay, so all of those do that. Zip forms, Dotloop, Authentisign, Transaction Desk. Transaction Desk is Authentisign. So yeah, all of those do that. Yep, Alicia, we have the same thing. Thanks for that. So they all do have those features. I don't have access to the others. I only have Authentisign and Transaction Desk. In January, I'll do a transaction templates class again because it's time. Seller checklists. Does anybody do a sheet with important phone numbers for sellers or for buyers?
Yes, both.
Great. So Nancy, what's on your important phone numbers?
So important phone numbers are local information. You'll have hospitals, the Social Security numbers. You'll have Chamber of Commerce, because that's an avenue to self-direct on your own schools, doctor facilities, healthcare facilities, and then you'll step down to accountants, lawyers. I've got a ton. I've got handyman, I've got heating people, anything that you can think of that they might require from their home inspection coming new to the area. And I always try to give 3 names always.
Okay, so yeah, this important phone list that I'm thinking of would be more like the fire department, the police department.
Yep.
It might have schools, your town, and you can get into some minutia, but if you provide them with like the electric company phone number or the gas company phone number and all of these, and you put it on a sheet at their closing, it makes you look like a hero. It's something very functional for them that helps them to attach to their new house and their possibly new community. They might have just moved down the street or around the corner, but they might have come from another part of the country or even the world. And especially for somebody that's coming, relocating to an area from somewhere else, it's really important. And then that minutia really becomes important because they don't know where anything is and they don't know any of the phone numbers. And I can tell you from experience, it's worrisome sometimes.
Right. If you sell a house in a new development or a new neighborhood, I have given out a map of the houses with the last names of families that own them, just so if there's ever an emergency, you know, and they don't have any backup support in our community, they know they have someone.
That's great. How many people have ever relocated out of an area into someplace brand new? It's terrifying. I've lived out of the country, out of the state. Out of the country was the scariest because no one spoke my language, and that was the scariest. So I would take a language book and I would write down scripts and hope they understood me. And someday I'll tell you the story of the water, but not today. And it was funny, and it worked, but it was kind of unnerving. Seller checklists. The seller's ebook in Howard Hanna presentation has a great set of checklists on how to evaluate the property, a checklist for the interior, for the exterior, things to look at. And I'm going to provide all those for you. Staging the interior, staging the exterior, preparing for showings, a moving checklist. People think they know how to move, but if they haven't moved in a few years, they forget how cumbersome a process this is. I moved 6 times between 2009 and 2015 because my husband was going to college and he had a career change, and 6 times. The first time we moved, we were downsizing from a 2,600 square foot house with a double garage with a double garage workshop behind it into an 1,100 square foot condo. And every time we moved, we downsized. I am a master mover now, but that first move about killed me. People don't realize how much stuff they have or what to get rid of or what the time frame is to start doing things and how to do them. One of the other things that a checklist can help you with and help your clients with is to understand that closing dates are target dates and not set in stone, because as soon as you give them a closing date, man, they're hiring the mover and they're going to come and move you on the 30th of the month, and they're not going to close till the 3rd of the next month. Or maybe they're going to close early and close on the 24th. So it's important to have a checklist and to address that issue right up front. And keep talking. Every time I talk to a client, once we have a contract, I say, remember your closing date's the target date. It's not set in stone. I say it every single time. I do it because I've once been burned. And I, like Terry Watson says, only have a problem once. So I get out in front of that problem proactively. The buyer-seller responsibility. This is a great chart. Actually, I think the first time I saw it, Chuck Flynn had provided it in a class. And it's a Howard Hanna document. I hadn't seen it. It's really nice. And I have it for you. And so you'll all be sent that. And it's a nice chart on one piece of paper. And it shows what the buyer's supposed to do and what the seller's supposed to do in green and red. And it goes down and it's very clean. It's very clear. And it helps everybody understand what the process is. So if you haven't seen that, I will be sending that to you later today. So look that over. And again, you're not going to use all the checklists I'm going to send you, but pick out what works for you, pick out what works best, and maybe recreate something that works with your pieces parts, or create a booklet with all these things in it. I don't know.
Maggie,
Yes.
I am sure, I don't know, I haven't seen those lists, but I'm just assuming that as we go through the list, we come up with all ourselves with all kinds of ideas, or it will remind us of things that we actually need to do and things we did not know that we should be doing.
Yeah, so the nice thing about the already prepared checklists is that especially if you've never been through the process before, it will point out things that you didn't think of. And if you've been doing this for a long time, it may remind you, oh, I used to do that, but I don't anymore. And that's always a stumbling point for me in the contract. So having something that somebody else has assembled sometimes can remind you that, oh yeah, I need all of these pieces. So a buyer's checklist, tools checklist. Melissa had talked about that earlier. What tools are they going to be using that are going to help them buy a house, especially in a seller's market? Home buyer checklist, house hunting checklist, items needed for the loan application, and a final walkthrough checklist. It's a great idea for them to see a final walkthrough checklist before they're at a final walkthrough. A lot of buyers show up to a house at a final walkthrough and they're walking through the house, but they don't know what they should be looking for. Have you ever been the listing agent and watched another agent come through a final walkthrough and they don't turn on the sink and they don't turn on the stove and they don't turn on the dishwasher and they don't check all the light switches and they don't check and they don't check and they don't check. Then when you get to closing, everything seems fine. And after closing, there could be a problem. If I'm there, I'm always there as a listing agent. So if they're not doing it, I'm doing it. So I just will say, well, let me just show you that the stove works, the refrigerator's on, because a lot of realtors just want to get it over with and they're sloppy. Don't be sloppy if you're the listing agent, don't be sloppy. That's your sellers you're protecting by showing them that everything's in good working order and getting a signed final walkthrough. Everything was okay when we walked through. It's really important. I went through one house with some clients and they had electric heat everywhere, the little radiators. And my client was smart enough to bring a little heat sensor. I'd never even seen one. And we turned on the heat and he pointed at everyone and we found that one of the units wasn't working. And so that we had that replaced that night before the closing the next day. I was like, that might be a good investment for me. So sometimes your clients can show you some things, but we turned it on. I would have just put my hand on each one. He actually had a sensor that showed him it was not working. Let's see. Alicia says she was on a final walkthrough in a multifamily and the appliances showed included in the purchase and the RPR at the final walkthrough, they were gone. That can happen. Also, if you think you're working with anybody shady, and I did have a case where I was walking through a house and the realtor just there was something about the situation that gave me pause. I took pictures of the serial numbers and of each appliance. But I opened the doors and I took pictures of the serial numbers. So if you think something's shady, that's a great way to protect yourself. Yeah, this looks similar, but this is not the same piece of equipment. This is what was here. It's documentation. Did it on my phone. I had that. Alicia says she does that now too. It's hard to be skeptical of other people's ethics, but it's your job to make sure your clients are getting what they paid for. So, but it's not your job to interfere. If you find there's a problem like that, who should you be calling?
Attorney.
The attorney. Thank you, Kim Donnelly, sorry. You need to call the attorney because you are the resource, not the source. Get the attorneys involved as soon as you see that there's a problem and let them handle it. Stay out of that. And don't escalate your clients by, getting emotional with them. Just try to keep it calm and keep it light and say, well, we're going to get your attorney involved and we'll get it taken care of. Don't worry about it. If you're calm, they're calm.
So Maggie,
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but one more question. So if it's your listing and the buyer is coming for a final walkthrough, you're supposed to be there as the person that listed?
That depends on you. You are the CEO of your company. I know lots and lots of listing agents who are not there. I'm there for every showing. I'm there for every walkthrough. I'm there for every inspection. That's how I choose to run my personal business, which is why I'm not doing that now as a trainer. I can't give that level of service. That's my choice on how I run my business. You have to decide how you want to run yours.
Okay.
So
I thought that you would be somebody else if you are as the seller coming in to final inspection.
I don't follow them.
Uh-huh.
But I am there. And then if there's a question, I'm there to answer that question. I do the same thing when they're for showings. I'm there, I'm at the house, and if there's a question, I'm there to immediately answer that question rather than have them speculate about a problem that I might be able to answer right there on the spot and say, well, no, this is this. And this, we're taking care of that. So it's, each of you are going to run your businesses differently, and you're going to have some managers that say, no, don't be there. It's going to cost you money. It's never cost me money to be there. I go to closings, I go to showings, that's how I real estate. So that's my personal choice. So I have to decide for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, let's see, where are we? Buyer client checklist, financial checklist, important phone numbers, moving checklist, buyer seller responsibilities again. So what's a financial checklist?
Things they need for the mortgage.
Everything they need for the mortgage. If they know what they're going to need, that's going to help them to be prepared to go to that loan officer. We have some great stuff available to us to help make sure that they have everything that they need. What happens if you have a client that does not responding to their loan officer? I need this particular paperwork. I need this pay stub. I need this, and they aren't getting back to them. What happens?
They're gonna lose their house.
They can, and their closings can be delayed, and their rates can be in jeopardy because they're missing deadlines. There are deadlines, so it's your job to set expectations by starting out with buyer-seller responsibilities and financial checklists and telling them, if your loan officer reaches out to you, you need to answer them quickly. This is going to help you close your house on your property that you want. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a really important thing. Again, those important phone numbers, they may be moving into new areas that they're unfamiliar with. Moving checklist, same for buyers. What's one of the things a buyer has to make sure they're doing? That's part of the moving checklist before they move in. What has to happen? What are a couple things that have to happen between the buyer and the seller in those last couple days?
Homeowners insurance.
Utility.
Yep, utilities. You got to have a transfer of utilities. How many people have ever been at a closing table and something didn't get transferred? Because the agent on the other side neglected to say, did you turn off the utilities? Oh, was I supposed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Some attorneys will do it for you. Some attorneys won't. So whose job is it to track that?
Yours.
Yours. Thank you, Kim. It is yours. So it's really important to have these financial checklists and these important phone numbers. This is going to just help everything go smoothly. One step and then the next step and then the next step. And it really will help move things along toward that all important closing.
Maggie,
So yes.
I just want to make the point that utilities, you never want to do a shut off. You want to do a transfer from seller to buyer. But to use the shut off, never say shut off, because you're going to have a relighting of pilot lights. You're going to have some sort of additional crises. Always transfer.
You are absolutely right. So let me go back and I'm going to start showing you some of these checklists that we have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. That's a great point. So we have evaluating your property. So this one's going to go through, this one's in part of that seller's the Essential Sellers book that you can find right in Howard Hanna presentation. So you can add this to your presentation, or you can have your listing presentation. You can have your CMA that may be separate, and you can have these sheets as a separate thing that you're giving to them. To give them all that at one sitting in the listing is way overwhelming. And it gives you an opportunity to have future conversations with people. So evaluating property, it's got exterior, entryway, living room, bathroom, bedrooms, best features, worst features, major issues on every item. It also gives you some blanks. So if you have additional areas, you could be adding them in here. Might be the deck, might be a shed, might be the garage, might be a finished basement, might be a workshop. So you could add whatever you needed to. So this is a nice checklist for evaluating the property. Why is this a good checklist for you as an agent? Even if your client never saw this, how could this help you?
So that you know ahead of time anything that needs repair before you put it on the market.
That's true. But in the listing presentation, how can this help you?
With price.
There you go. Price. So if you've got a lot of things that are hitting that major issue, you're going to want to talk about the reality of a fair market value price is fair market value minus condition and repairs, or plus condition and repairs, right? To a certain extent. So you need to have, so this can be very helpful to you to make your point on a listing or a price presentation. Preparing for showings. This can be a great list for sellers. They don't know what they need to do. A lot of them, some of them haven't done this in 20 years. So make all the beds, keep the counters cleared off and clean. How many of you have washed dishes? I know I have. How many of you swept floors? How many of you have then been terrified to walk into the bathroom? I keep a tub of cleaning supplies in my car and a pair of rubber gloves. Because if I'm going to show a property, I'm trying to sell a property, I will take those extra steps and clean up if they have failed to. I will have a conversation with them after about, we need to have a certain standard to get the price that you want. If this is the price you want, this is what we need to do to get that price. If you're willing to settle for less than not preparing the home for presentation, it won't be as important if you're willing to take less money rather than clean up your mess, basically. So you have to be careful how you say that, and you have to be very diplomatic. But, if you're presenting a mess, that's what you're going to get. The offers are going to be based on. So you got to have some frank conversations. They've got to tidy up any clutter. The words here are very nice. Sandra, did you have a question? Okay. Ensure your home smells neutral. So if they have a lot of pets, they can't smell it anymore. They are what is referred to in the psychology as habituated to it. They cannot smell it. If you're a fishmonger and you work in the fish market, you don't smell the fish. If you're not a fish market and you walk into the fish market, what do you smell? You're overwhelmed by the smell of fish, and whew, they can't even smell it. Firemen can't smell smoke. They can initially. After they've been in a fire, they cease to smell it. They habituate to it. So if you walk into a home and it's not neutral, you need to find a nice way to talk to them about other people's sensitivities. And those can be difficult conversations, but this list can help them think about it and kind of take the onus off of you. Let's see, we have staging the exterior. It's got the yard, porches, decks, and patios, house, driveways, and walkways. Again, this is part of the seller's essential guide. We have staging the interior. And it talks about keeping things clean and uncluttered. One of the things that I like to say to people is, have you ever been to a model home or watched HGTV? What do you notice? There's not a lot of personal objects out. Things are neutral. Things are really clean. Surfaces are uncluttered. Tell them, you're going to move anyway. Let's pack everything out. Let's touch it once. Pack it up, sell it, get rid of it before we ever put the house on the market. Let's get it cleaned up the first time. You're gonna move anyway, so let's get it boxed up and labeled. So that this can help you to get through that. And this talks about cleaning the kitchen, making bathroom sparkle, and what to do during a showing. Open drapes and blinds, leave the lights on, keep soft background music playing or no music. Music
Hey,
can
Maggie.
really affect people. Yeah, Jen?
Can I just jump in?
course.
Desiree is asking, would it be possible to demonstrate how to find these checklists within
You bet.
Hannah presentations?
You bet. Let me get that opened up. Hang on. Good question, Desiree.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Give me a second to get in here. So if you go to your Go Hannah dashboard, and all of the checklists I'm going to send you were not found here. Some of them Natalie Dugood and I found elsewhere, and we cleaned them up, and Natalie did a great job of we call Hannahizing. So some of them are here, not all of them. I have a pretty comprehensive list. All right, so let's go create new, and let's do a seller one. Continue. So you have seller and buyer. And let's do a seller template. Waiting for my green circle. All right, so if I go to pages and I add a page from library, and I go to my brokerage pages, right down here in the brokerage pages are the seller's guide and the buyer's guide. There's one of the things I've asked them to do, but they haven't done it yet, is I would like each of these labeled for what's on page 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, because right now they don't have any differentiation except their page number, which is a pain in the tuchus. So if you guys want to put that in the suggestion box so that we can get these labeled, they would be great. So this one, in my opinion, should say home selling timeline. So I recommend that you look at all of these individually. This is a great guide. I'm going to send, I think we have it sent to you as a, Natalie, I can't remember. Does this one go out as one piece?
This presentation?
Yeah, the seller's e-guide.
Yeah, it's actually a template. Are you in the template that's already all set up? If you go to do a new one, you can do the template and do like the seller's template, and then it will say the guide, and then it's basically all set to go and you can just email it out.
Can you rename those yourself, Maggie? That listing there had those 3 little dots on the side. I wonder if they can be renamed at all.
You mean the essential guide?
Yeah, no, right there where you are, go to the screen all the way to the right. Yeah, what are the options there? Can you?
No. No, but I can save it as.
Yeah, you can.
I could save it as, and I could name it there.
But then it has to be saved on my computer and not.
Or in the cloud.
Or in the cloud, yeah, right, okay.
Yep. So yes, you could. And the other thing you can do is print out one page of everything, scan it all in as one piece, and have it as a document to send that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another option. So you do have, there are several ways to work that. So this is, if you go to your broker pages, you have the seller's guide and the buyer's guide. In the Howard Hanna New York folder, we have reaching more customers, personalized marketing, built on tradition. One of my favorites, and Melissa Carey alluded to this earlier, is, let me find it. Listing with Howard Hanna. I love this piece. It has all of the things that we do, and how we compare to other companies, and it's pretty neutral, although we know what these colors mean, right? We know what this little flag, this little signpost is, and who this little signpost is, and who this one is. So it shows things that we do that other companies don't do. So this can be very valuable for you, and you could repurpose this to have a checklist on what things you want, they specifically want to do. So this is a great place to find a bunch of those checklists. Some of the checklists that aren't, I just want to look at this one. We also have included in here is the buyers and the sellers ebooks, the big brochures. If you've seen them, they're in here in an e-form, which is really nice. This is the buyer seller responsibilities I mentioned earlier. I love this, it's great. It's a nice, simple, clean chart of buyer and seller responsibilities. So the seller's on the left, the buyer's on the right, and it has all of the things that can happen and what the process is. The only thing it doesn't account for on this particular chart, and you can find others on Google, would be if a contract failed and then how you would come back up. You know, so if this is about a positive going from a contract to close.
I'm sorry, are you including that in the email you're sending us?
Yes.
Thank you.
So you'll get everything that's on this list. We have this nice little ebook that came out of the Guilderland office. This one, you couldn't use it the way it is, but it's a nice little piece. Marketing may be able to help us get these across the board for other areas. This one is, I think, labeled for Guilderland Capital District. We have a final walkthrough checklist. This is great for you to know what to look for at final walkthrough. It's a great idea for your clients to have an idea ahead. Jen?
Just a couple of things, checking the chat. Stephanie said, would you print off the whole presentation packet and bring to the listing for them as well as showing them online? And that's personal preference. And Maggie, you can address that. And also Liz Schulteis, one of our managers in Saratoga, asked, can we get the checklist directly from GoHanna without going into Hannah presentations?
Yeah, if you go to GoHanna, you go to the search, you can type in Seller's Essential Guide and you can find it that way. I have found it easier just to get that one right through Hannah presentations, but that little search, if you go to your GoHanna dashboard, this is underutilized. There's three things that are way underutilized on our dashboard. One is this search. You can type a lot of things in here, and you can find, just keep it simple. If you're looking for a checklist, type the word checklist. Click on it, go to it, and then click the Documents tab, and you'll have documents in there. Another thing that's grossly underutilized is the suggestion box. If you have suggestions to make, there's something that you're needing, wanting, hoping will change, put it in here. They actually read these and they actually make changes based on these. We've seen it happen. And the other one that's underutilized is what's new. So if you're wanting to know what has happened recently, there's a whole page for it every day available to you.
So Maggie, where did you click what's new and where did you click the suggestion box?
Suggestion box is right on your dashboard. This is your GoHanna dashboard, so it's right here.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, now I see. And what's new is over there too. Okay,
yep.
Yeah.
And this is your training and education calendar.
Yeah.
And a lot of you don't know that this is here. And if it's a class that I've set up, it has all of the links, the dates and the times right in it. So if you click on today's class, it'll come up with all of the information on the class and the link. So if you ever have missed something, it's on the calendar, at least for New York State, because I make sure it's there for us. So again, we have the final checklist. We have items needed for the loan application, and it's a nice little checklist. And this comes out of first priority. We have home services, moving checklist. These are all nicely prepared by Howard Hanna and branded to you. These are things that they may keep going forward, which may help to identify you as their agent. So these can be very helpful. Seller assessments, whole bunches of stuff here. So you will all get all of these. I already have the email set up. I just have to send it to you. So what other questions about checklists do you have? Do you have any? How can I help you? I see something in the chat. What we got?
We got a thank you.
Oh, well, that's it. Anybody got any other questions? Anybody have any checklists that we didn't mention that you think are great and we should be considering?
Hi, Maggie. I wanted to mention that in one of your previous classes, you had suggested the app called Tasks, and it has helped me a lot. So I didn't know if you wanted to share that with the group or not, but it definitely helps me, stay organized with my checklist.
Yeah, that's an Engage class. So if you guys are not using Engage, using your Engage tasks can help you with your checklist. It is a checklist, same as using Transaction Desk. So if you want to go into Engage, how many of you are using tasks in Engage? Nobody. Okay, that's a shame. These can be specific to you. So this may be where you're getting hung up, that you got in there and you found but yeah, I can speak. And you found that there were 72 tasks and you were like, that's too cumbersome. I'm not going to send 12 thank you notes. So one of the things that you do first when you get into Engage is go to this little gear, which means settings, Engage settings, and task manager. And it will take me to this screen and I can come in and customize my buyer plan. I can add tasks. And they have this huge list of tasks that are already here, or I can create a new task and name it whatever I want. When I first got involved with this task list, I was really annoyed by this day 1 through whatever it is. And then I realized I didn't need to be annoyed by that, because once I just put in for the tasks that happen when I'm the first days of a contract, I put in days something like 1 through 3 or 4. And then the middle task, I put in day 10 through 14. And then I pick a date like 30 through 45 for the closing tasks. When I actually get the contract, I actually go in and put in dates. And so then I stopped worrying about the day. Jen?
Just another question from Donna Chow. How much should we leave with the sellers at the first listing appointment?
So Donna, that's really going to be dependent upon your sellers. You don't want to leave everything, because you'll overwhelm them. I don't care who they are. But so you're going to have to read your seller, and you may want to just ask them some questions. So you're going to leave your listing presentation. That's theirs. And if you've packaged it up nicely, or if you send it to them electronically, the electronic one, I would promote to them as it's live. The paper one doesn't change from the day you printed it. The live one, the paperless one, changes. However, if they like to see things in print, then you print it and put it in a nice little binder and move on. Again, you have to adapt to the client you're serving. You may want to have an opportunity to come back and touch base with them again, stay in touch with them, and so come back with things. And you can send them electronically, you can send them personally, but it's a great way to keep your communications going. So it's really going to depend on you, on your client, and the situation. So I'm sorry that's not a very clean answer. This is that gray part of real estate I don't like. I wish there was, on day 3, you're going to take them this. It's just not like that. Does that answer your question, Donna? More or less?
I think, Maggie, you're so right about the importance of reading the person before you go, to try to find out as much information about them as possible. Because if you have a client who's an engineer, for example, they might want a lot of lists and statistics, and they will just eat up all of that. If you have someone who is more visual, that they want more pictures. If there's someone who's very rushed and very busy, they want to be able to read everything on one page and get a snapshot without spending too much time. So yeah, there's so much. So many.
And that's true of us as realtors. Jen and I are on a team, and we were presenting some material to someone else, and that person is known for wanting sound bites and bullet points. And so we took a lot of information and put it on one piece of paper. If it were a piece of paper, it was electronic, to make it small, because that's how that person receives information. I'd like pictures and sound effects and, all of that stuff, and a little more detail. Not everyone is me. And yeah, you have to relate to the client or clients. So you have two clients, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, wife and wife, husband and husband, whatever, mom and her son buying a home. They may not receive information equally. You may have to leave different information with both of them so that they're getting what they need, because they're involved in the purchase. So don't forget, you're not just working with one person. You're maybe working with two and sometimes more. Those get really complicated. But if there's a third decision maker, you may have to present to them too. So it can get pretty complicated. But if you're staying on top of it, as far as your checklist, you can have all that information available for them in the form that they prefer.
Hello.
So let me see what else we got. So that was your task list. So thanks for that, Desiree. These task lists can be assigned. And if you guys don't know how to do this, I'm just going to go back here to show you. At Engage, go to Resource Center. There are 67, last check, videos on how to use Engage. If you come to Engage training and tutorials, Engage videos.
Maggie, can I
Yep.
jump in? There's
You
another
betcha.
question. Do you know of any good apps for the phone regarding task lists or lists?
I don't use any of those on my, you mean like an actual app? I would be using my Engage if, because it's already there and it's free and it's available online. I use my calendar on my phone and I send reminders. I send things to clients. So if I have buyers and we're going to look at 5 houses, I'll send them the address for every single house and the time we're going to be there. And I'll send them an email, I'll add them as a contact so they get each address at each time that we're supposed to be there so they don't get lost, especially if we're doing multiple properties, and they confirm. So I'll tell them. It's also a way I get a good email. So I'm going to meet you at these houses. We're going to go on tour. I'm going to send you a confirmation email, and it will send you the address. And right from there, they can hook up to their Google Drive. Yeah, Jen?
Just Desiree commented that she uses Google Tasks because it links to her Google Calendar and Gmail, which, I'm an Outlook user. So, there's certainly that app. I do pretty much everything on my phone. So it's whatever you're comfortable using. I know that there are tons of apps out there. There's To-Do List, Evernote, there's tons of them if you just Google it. But again, any app is only as good as what you're going to use.
Absolutely. And I would recommend, I was a Google Universe girl. I loved everything Google. Everything we have works best on Outlook. So I had a moment of silence for my Google. And then I did what my motto for real estate is: accept, adapt, and move on. And I accepted Outlook, I adapted to Outlook, and I moved on to Outlook. And I do everything on Outlook because our systems work with Outlook. So I would recommend that. Engage, Ellen, to answer your question, an age task list, easy to use on the phone. Depends on you, how well you see, what your phone works like, how big your screen is. So it's really dependent on you. So you have to try it, because not everything works for every person. What might work for me might not work for you. Sandra, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say one thing. I'm from the Southern Tier. I don't think maybe nobody else is on the here from the Southern Tier, but anyway, one thing that I think is very important that I would like to say is use the presentations. If you're competing, or I've been at an appointment where there's other Howard Hanna agents that just, they don't use these things, and I've got the listing because of using our tools. So, it is so important.
I
So,
agree. Thanks for sharing that. It's true. It elevates you.
yeah.
You look professional.
Yeah, I teach a lot of the Buffini classes. In fact, we're starting another one up in January. So if anybody has a chance to get on any Buffini classes, I highly recommend them too.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Jen's a facilitator. I'm a facilitator. Jen has more experience than I do by far. Yeah, there's some great things out there to help you with systems and processes and planning. And it's a good thing to get that, to be working on that. So let's go back here. And I think that, I'm going to send you all of these. There are some, and there's more. There's more stuff available. However, you're not going to use all of it. Figure out what works best for you and then use it consistently, because consistency is what's going to help you with your business. Having a consistent process, a process is the plan, the steps A through Z, A through Z that are going to get you where you need to go. And you may not need every step for every transaction, but you have to have every step initially. So we need a well or septic inspection, right? For every property, but you need to know that that's something you have to think about with every property in case it comes up, because if you don't ever put it on the list and you've got a house with a septic and you forget to put septic inspection on your checklist, you're going to miss it. So you can take things off. Make sure you've got everything there that you could possibly need, and then remove it as you need it for each individual transaction. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'll get these out to you in the next few minutes. Do you guys have any additional questions or comments? All right then.
Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah, I didn't think it would take the full time. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah. Have a safe and happy holiday, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Got it, Judy?